morning to you all, and thanks for being here. Just a reminder for mobiles, if you have your mobile on you, if you could switch it off, because it does interfere with our system of recording, and we are on live, on air, so that's live telecast, for those, not telecast, but whatever, live through the system. So we encourage those that, we thank those that are listening online as well, and welcome them to our meeting. Please be seated. Thank you. As we open the meeting, we have no apologies. Declaration of interest. Alderman Gibson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just wanted to note that the item 15.1, specifically the Encore Theatre Company recommendation, as I'm a director with Encore Theatre.
Thank you. Any other declaration of interest? Alderman Stosnicek.
15.2, the Tamar Valley Sponge.
Thank you. Any other? General Manager.
Mayor, just for the record, in respect of 15.3, I'm the Vice President of the Launceston Triathlon Club.
Thank you. Any other declaration of interest? Confirmation of the minutes. Somebody happy to move the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 10th of September? Moved, Alderman McKenzie. Seconded, Deputy Mayor, was that? No. Oh, sorry. I thought you sort of moved your hand. So, Deputy Mayor seconded. All those in favour, please raise their hand. That's carried. Thank you. So there's no deputations today, no petitions, no community reports, public question time, which are not on notice.
I asked the question of Council to consider meeting and discussing the recess before elections, taking the matter of a set period of recess prior to elections to LOGAT for determination, such as state and federal government. When the writ is issued, that is when the Parliament go in recess. So I ask that the Council consider doing that.
Well, I think we can consider that with the new council, which would be, won't be for this election, but be for the next one.
And there's also, on that matter, the Council meets today, again on the 7th and again on the 22nd,
We're aware of that.
which is right up till the voting is finished,
Correct.
virtually finished. Council election signage. Under the Launceston Planning Authority rules, can candidates place two signs on the one tenement or house or what for the council elections? I refer you to it. It states one sign.
Correct, and I know I had a few 2-on-1 and I've corrected all those, so they've all been changed.
Thank you, Your Worship.
I know, and well, there might be others around, but that's up for each alderman and candidate that's standing. But yeah, it's one. But how council works, if we get a complaint, I assume it is, it's got to be in writing to council, then the officers will go and handle it.
I haven't gone that far. I've just mentioned it today, and hopefully all aldermen or all candidates will do the right thing.
I'm sure not all candidates are listening, but yeah. Next question.
Ron Baines, Kings Meadows. I'd like once more to ask this council, hopefully this is third time lucky, how do you intend to repay the loan of $9 million from the state government in the 3 years remaining on this contract? And so far I've asked, this is the third time I've asked this question, and I really haven't had a satisfactory answer. So would somebody be able to give me one now, please?
Well, General Manager.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So the answer is it's an interest-free loan, which you're aware of, which is budgeted,
I am aware,
which
yes.
is to be budgeted and included in the council's forward estimates. So as part of our long-term finance plan to be funded and fully paid within the timeframe that you've stated. So it's obviously be included in the council's budget and will be paid in full at the time it falls due.
Do we have a final date on that?
5 years from 3 years, is it? Was it 5? Yeah. Well, at the due date, which we can get that if you want to put it on for you, when the due date will be.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we've done our budgets, thank you. Any other questions from the public?
Hi, my name's Darren Wrigley. I live at 25 Benvenue Road. This is about the works that's been done on 27 Benvenue Road. Why haven't the council removed the driveway and retaining wall? It's an illegal build. Why does the council ignore us trying to save our home? Can the council explain why I'm getting mould under my house? Can the council explain why I'm getting water under my house when someone's washing their car at 27 Benvenue Road under the carport? I would like some answers. I'm sick of please understand. It's got to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. General Manager.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I can say in respect to that matter that we met with the neighbour on Friday, and he's been issued with a new notice, a building notice today, and there'll be correspondence that will be forwarded before the end of the week that basically finalises the council's position in the overall matter, and that should answer the questions that are being asked.
Thank you. Any other questions? I've got a few here. Do you want to ask? Gillian Weston, do you want to? Not here?
Yes.
Do you want to ask the question, or you want me just to?
I think you can address what I'm reading down there.
Yep. Well, everybody hasn't got the question though, that's why. So, but I'll read it out if you like.
Yes, please.
If you're happy with that. Does the Mayor remember his promise? Not exactly, but I remember a discussion, made at the Deputy Mayor's funeral service that his dream, the Deputy Mayor's that is, of a rail trail between Launceston and Scotstow would become a reality. And secondly, if the railway continues to Waiina, what would the benefit to the people who live there be? Well, this matter will be discussed. We haven't made a decision on that yet, but I do remember discussions that I've had on that, and that will all come out in the discussion today. Thank you. So that's it for questions, is it? Thank you. Questions on notice are there from the previous meeting. So now under the where are we? Provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act, Council acts as a planning authority in regard to items included in the agenda item 8, Planning Authority. So we have a number of speakers. So, General Manager, if you could read out the rules, please.
Thanks, Mayor. So only residents, ratepayers or people on the electoral roll of the City of Launceston may address an item on the agenda. Before commencing, please state your name and address or property owned in Launceston. You may speak for up to 2 minutes. There will be no extension of time permitted. You must speak for or against the recommendation and not ask questions of aldermen or officers or attempt to enter into debate with aldermen or officers. Statements can only be made either directly relating to supporting the recommendations or arguing against it. Comments and statements are not to be defamatory, offensive or abusive or be designed to embarrass any person, including aldermen or officers. Statements are not to be repetitive of statements or points already made. Several people repeating a common position should nominate a single speaker on their behalf. The Mayor may ask a member of the gallery to cease speaking if the above procedures are not followed. Following hearing the comments of the gallery, Alderman will then consider the item.
Thank you, General Manager. First speaker is Astrid Caitler.
I'm Astrid Kettler. I'm the business owner of AK Consultants. I'm applying for a change of use for the premises at 1461 George Street. It's currently retail, and I'm applying to change the use to business and professional services. I'm a small business owner. Our business has operated in the Launceston area for more than 30 years. Not as me as the proprietor, but it used to be Armstrong Agricultural Services. I employ 5 full-time people and 1 part-time person. I've been looking for a change of premises for more than a year now. It's very difficult to actually find an office to suit the number of staff that I have. We provide services to the agricultural sector. We have clients coming into our business, so it's an agricultural natural resource management consulting business. And so we provide foot traffic, if you like, as far as the clients coming into the premises. So I think one of the main objections has been that operating as a business in Yorktown Square is going to detract from the food type atmosphere in Yorktown Square. In my opinion, I don't think that actually is the case. The premises has been vacant for some time, and I think it's better to have the premises occupied with staff and people coming in to talk to my staff rather than having it empty. So I'm in favour of the change of use, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy Richards.
Thank you. I'm Judy Richards. I own Judy's Body Fashions in Yorktown Square, Launceston, which is speaking against Astrid here of changing Shop 29 as we know it, Yorktown Square. I've been in the square now for 20 years. I've been in business 36 years in this beautiful city. Yorktown Square is a village in the city. It's quite quaint. It's beautiful. We get lots of tourists because of its colonialisation of the early years of the city when the creek and the river came into the area. So there's a lot of interest. And we are, I represent the Yorktown Square Merchants Association. And as all our traders, which are retail and food, during the day, we would like to see the building go as another retail shop or another food shop, and not into the change of business. I just see if we let it go and we get we change one shop, one opening, there'll be more, and the business, the little city centre will lose that. I think that maybe Yorktown Square could be changed from just general business, central business of the CBD to something more special, something a little bit more special for tourism and activity within the area, and keep it at that. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. That's all the speakers I have on here. There's no other speakers on this item. Thank you. So item 8.1, is someone happy to move a motion? Alderman Mackenzie, thank you. Seconded, Alderman Finlay. Alderman Mackenzie, you wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. And I note the comments made by the speakers in relation to the matter. I guess I look at Launceston as a place where we often receive complaints about the fact of the empty shop frontages in our streets. This is a business that sits on the periphery of Launceston at the moment, looking to bring its business into the CBD and bring 5 employees and a half an employee as a part-timer into the city. And looking at what we're trying to achieve in the city is a more vibrant operating city. Any business that comes in, I think, adds value to that. I note the comments made by the retailers in relation to wanting to keep it as a retail precinct. I don't think necessarily that's the way it's zoned. It is a commercial use, which I think it does need discretion of the council to allow that to happen. But I think 5 people going in there will actually bring 5 people who might buy coffee from the coffee shop, buy food from the shops are there, and they'll be there every day, and not necessarily just passer-by traffic. I take on board the notes, the comments made by the proprietor in that they have clients that come in and out of the office, which will also provide foot traffic in and around the area. Would I want the whole of Yorktown Square to end up as a series of office buildings? No, I wouldn't. This premises, I think, has been vacant for some time, and I guess I have some sympathy for the person who owns the building, that they may wish to get some return back from it. And I believe that by bringing an office premises in there, it's going to add additional vibrancy to that area and may well actually be a benefit. So I'm going to be voting in favour of this.
Thank you. Alderman Finlay? Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor's got a question.
Thanks, Mayor, and I do apologise if I have missed it in the reading. To follow Alderman Mackenzie's remarks, how long had the premises been vacant for before this has come to us today?
Director Hurst, or?
Thanks, Mayor. It did actually come up this morning. I don't actually know the answer to that, but it's been well over 6 months, I would suggest, since the last tenant was in that building.
Thank you. Alderman Finlay.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks to both speakers that have raised their positions in regard to this matter. As a planning authority, when applications like this come before us, it's our responsibility to consider the application in regards to the provisions of the scheme, and on assessment where all elements of this change of use application are consistent and are consistent with the requirements of the scheme and they comply, particularly with the zone purpose, which is for central business, which is for that mix of retail, business, the civic and cultural activities, community activities, food, professional, hotel and tourism. But although it's understood that collectively the traders in the area would like to retain that village and retail feel, our responsibility today is to assess this application and the change of use as per the instruments of the scheme. It is consistent with that, and therefore it is appropriate for us to approve this application today, consistent with Alderman Mackenzie's comments that in fact could be useful to the traders in the area in terms of lunch activity, shopping in lunchtime activity, using the coffee and the food offerings available not only in Yorktown Square but in the immediate area. One of the intentions for us is to intensify and ensure that we keep the integrity of the central area, and by being able to bring organisations that wish to into vacant properties of town where the use is consistent with the scheme, I see this as a positive for Launceston, so the application has my support.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, Alderman Soward.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, and the two previous speakers have touched on the main points of the argument for me. I do empathise with Ms Richards' remarks around, and the other retailers around some of the angst that they feel. And as a long-standing area of the city, and I think Mrs Richards might have used the word village, I think that's a really nice way to describe it. It's a very special part of the city. But I guess on the flip side, and that's where I guess the emotional side of it, notwithstanding, I'll get to the planning side of it in a moment. Unfortunately, from time to time, particularly over the last few years, this council has been criticised for the amount of empty shops there are around the place. And on the remark, when I asked the question from the director, even 6 months is a fair period of time, notwithstanding someone owns that space. So there's a landlord, a building owner there who's not getting an income from that. The space can lead to negative perception, and I'm sure those who own shops in there want a vibrant an area, not an area with lots of empty shops. I guess on the planning side of it, as Alderman Finlay and Alderman Mackenzie highlighted, you know, we've got no reason to refuse it under planning law. So in that regard, it stands up. But I guess for me, the view I've taken, notwithstanding the planning stuff, if I looked at it from an emotional thing, I'd look at it as an opportunity to bring business into that area. One of the strange things, Mr Mayor, that does puzzle me from time to time in this city, we're not a city like New York. We're not a city that takes forever and a day to walk around. We're a relatively compact, small, relatively flat city. There would be a number of people in this city who don't go through Yorktown Square. So what I'm hoping that there's 2 wins from this. For Miss Kettler and her business, that her 5 staff that are there all of a sudden are more aware of the businesses in Yorktown Square, but their clients all of a sudden might go, oh, I didn't know that shop was there. And as simple as that sounds, Mr Mayor, I'm sure that will happen. People don't always know where businesses are in the city, despite the fact we are a small city. So I'm hoping Ms Kettler's business does very well. I'm hoping the clients that her staff bring in avail themselves of the shops in that area, and that in some ways, you know, it's a plus by not having that empty shop there either. So I do understand the concerns, but I'll be supporting it.
Any other speakers? Alderman Mackenzie, you wish to close? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all aldermen present. The motion is carried. Council now no longer sits as a planning authority. Could I have somebody move that we actually bring forward item 21.1? Move, Deputy Mayor, seconded Alderman Cox. All those in favour, please raise your hand, and that is all aldermen present. So what we're now doing is bringing forward item 21.1, the Tasmanian North East Rail Corridor. We have a number of speakers for that as well. First of all, Mr Basil Fitch.
Thank you, Your Worship. Basil Fitch. Right on. I get this stuff. Basil Fitch, 5 Waveney Street. This position has come about, in my opinion, because this council should have been involved long, long ago. And now it's got to this stage where you're going to have to find a way around what is your property, what is the property belonging to Dorset. And unless you both get together and sort it out properly, there's going to be winners and losers, as I can see it. And the winners will probably be the bike trail, and the losers the rail. And there can even be now, under the present proposition, that bikes going from Stop Cayena, is it, or what, to Scottsdale, but Waiena, yeah, that'll be a bike trail, and will it be a bike trail for the people there? I don't know. But I think you've left it far too long, Your Worship, and this matter should have been dealt with long ago, but of course we know that Mr Howard and Mr Gutland are involved, so I'll say no more.
Thank you. Who's going to be here? Greg Howard. I hope he's not coming. Stuart Price.
Good afternoon, Alderman and the Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak. Is this seat turned on? It is. Okay. I just want to give a little bit of history to this. Again, as what Basil had said, you know, that you've picked this up a little bit on the late side. And it is in your minutes there that the railway was closed in 2004 by Pacific National. I specifically make that point because it wasn't closed by the government. It was closed by Pacific National, the operator. And at that particular time, basically all tourist and heritage rail in Tasmania stopped dead. In the meantime, there's something like about 18 tourist and heritage rails in Victoria, which all make money. There's some confusion about whether they do or not, simply because they're actually not-for-profit commercial organisations. So in other words, they can't distribute funds, but they can plough funds back into the railway to improve the experience and also to employ more people instead of volunteers, which of course is the ultimate aim for all of us. So we didn't know much about this cycle trail until it was announced in the May budget, May 15 budget. And it came as a bit of a shock to a lot of us, and particularly me, because I knew nothing about it whatsoever. So I started attending meetings, and eventually I was invited by the farmers in the area to actually represent them. Now, yes, I'm aware that there's people on the railway line who want a cycle trail, but I'm also aware that there's over 220 that don't. And the numbers that do wouldn't even come to 20. So the majority of the farmers do not want the invasion of their privacy. They do not want biosecurity risks. They do not want safety risks with their animals. And that's the way they stand. We have been on this path now. This is our 4th year. We've caused 2 injunctions to the proceedings, the first and the second one. Now the third one, we're well aware that the administrators of the National Australian Region Fund. Okay, thank you. Quick, sweetness.
Ian Bassett.
Ian Bassett, 320 Bacala Road Tunnel. Mr Mayor and councillors,
I am a member of Launceston North East Rail and Farmers. As you know, the government has made a political decision to give North East Rail the line to the Falls and bikes to Scottsdale from the Falls. The logistics to stop rail and start bikes at the Falls is not very good, as it is a high bridge and embankments. The road crossings either side are not appropriate to stop and start safety-wise. Also, the Falls ground is often full of picnickers and campers. The train would lose the two best features for tourists, being the tunnel and Denison Gorge. I ask you to at least let the train run to Waina in our municipality. We have the expertise, manpower and finance to do this. After we prove we can do this, we will get to use Tasrail line from Coldwater Creek to Launceston, a big boost for the city tourist trade. Everyone from the very young to the very old could enjoy the train ride. I ask that council have a look at the line at the tunnel station yard, or all steel rail and sleepers. Would be a terrible waste to destroy such an asset. Ideally, we need to get to Waina station so as people can get on and off the train. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Brian Kahn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Alderman. I've already spoken previously at question time about the advantages of Bridestone Estate with its 85,000 visitations and its extreme value to this city and to the accommodation in the city. I'd like to acquaint you with the opposition Anthony Albanese's Progress and National Rail Plan, and at least $49 billion in new rail investment planned in the next decade. Now, we've got to take note, as what he said in his paper, if we give industry policy approach right, we can create new jobs while lifting economic growth. We can boost apprenticeships and improve the skills base, which will propel Australian manufacturing forward for decades across a range of sectors. To make this happen, we need intense collaboration between industry, governments, training providers and trade unions. Australia needs a national rail industry plan, a framework to ensure we exercise national dividends. States must coordinate strategies and levels of governance must be reached in all areas. And we must particularly note that our Pro-Vice-Chancellor, David Adams, and Warwick Smith, the former federal member for this electorate of Bass, have already started on what in Queenstown. And if we can get manufacturing back into this city, which we already know the state government is making Bell Bay the oil port for Tasmania, and we can create jobs in this city. So, and it's nice to build our new hotels, as our general manager has recently been told by a hotelier in the town, but we've got to have the attractions to bring the people here.
Thank you. Julian Weston.
I'm Gillian Weston. I live directly opposite the Lilydale Falls at 231 Golconda Road. It seems evident to me that whether or not there is a railway or a rail trail, it needs to go to the village of Lilydale itself. It doesn't need to stop at the falls. There is no benefit in it stopping at Waina. For any of the people of Lilydale itself to benefit in any way from either a rail trail or a railway, it needs to go to the village of Lilydale. That's all my point.
Thank you. Wendy McLennan.
I'd like to first of all say thank you very much for listening to all the presentations that we've made to the council previously. I think that what hasn't been taken into consideration in the whole thing is the fact that when the farmers bought land along that railway line, they knew it was a railway line. Whether it was used as a railway line or not, that really doesn't enter into the argument. I think the whole point is that they only had a train that actually went through their property. If it's going to be converted into a rail trail, that will mean there's 24 hours a day access to that line by horses, by motorbikes, by bikes, by walkers. And although the proposition is that it's going to only be for people that are walking and riding bikes, that is not going to happen because there's already motorbikes on that trail riding on the railway. So they're enjoying the bump over the railway. The other railway that's going in another direction, there's already been bike riders have said and complained about the fact that there were dead cattle in the paddocks. Now, people don't understand the farmers and what the farmers have to go through. When their cattle are calving, they've got to be going round them constantly. And the concern of the farmers is that if they've got cattle calving and people see that, they're likely to ring the RSPCA to say that they're not managing their farms properly. But again, I would like to thank the council for putting forward this proposition and acknowledging that we do really need to go to the Waina border to be able to service the Lavender Farm, which has 85,000 tourists, and we can bring a lot more tourists in on a train, and that will benefit not only Launceston City Council with accommodation, but it will also add another product to the region for people to be able to go and participate in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michael de Bonford.
Thank you, Mayor and Alderman. The initial project, when it was announced for the rail trail federally, I'm also a ratepayer at Launceston, sorry if I'm nervous, there appeared to be very little consultation in regards to the project. 2/3 of the railway line is actually in the Launceston municipality, and for a project which is seems to be steered from the Dorset Council, I perceive there should have been probably initially more consultation and to the actual project. The actual long-term maintenance of the line is, as a ratepayer, is actually. Sorry, the nerves overtake me at times. Yeah, look. That per kilometre, there's $27,000 for maintenance, and over a 12-month period, with that line being, 2/3 of 70 kilometres is rough, 50k, it works out an average of about $200,000. So there's 13 rail trail organisations in Victoria who are currently managed by separate maintenance entities, and they all want them to go back to local councils to be maintained. So if the council needs to, long term, the council will be, as a recreational trail, will be maintaining this line. So it's going to be costing the ratepayer just for maintenance, let alone any other costings of roughly $200,000. So, I'm a strong supporter of the railway line. I'd like to see it from Launceston through to Scottsdale.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all the speakers I have here. Any other speakers? Just state your name and address, please.
My name's Jeremy Sachenko. I live at 839 Golconda Road, Labrina. I had my house built in 2012. When I approached council to build it, they told me that it could have the railway started up again, and I was happy with that. They never said that they may start a bike track up. Had they had so, I probably wouldn't have built my house there. I think it's a waste of taxpayer money to remove the rails. If anything, give the heritage rail a go, see what happens over 5 to 10 years. If it doesn't work out, then okay, then the bikes can go. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yep, thank you. Any other speakers? Just in time, sir. Do you know the rules of the speaker? You've been here before. Thank you.
My name is Malcolm Cowan. I'm with the North East Rail Recreation Trail Committee. Excuse me. I'd like to just query the council as to why this motion has come up. We thought this whole arrangement was settled with the the government and Dorset Council. It appears to me that we can't work out why the council has even thought this motion, excuse me, this motion up, because it's not feasible to run the rail trail beside the railway in that section of between Lilydale and Waiina. It's disruptive to the whole community now, and now that we thought this was settled, we were getting settled into getting the rail trail run between Dorset and Lilydale, and the rail people can have a go at running their train between Turners Marsh and Lilydale. So we're finding it very hard to understand why this motion is even being considered by council.
Thank you. Any other speakers? So we have the motion 21.1. Someone happy to move a motion? We need a motion.
I haven't got an alternative at the moment, but I'll move the motion to have some discussion, otherwise we don't have any.
I'll second it pro forma for the same purposes.
Moved Alderman McKendrick, seconded Alderman Gibson. Alderman McKendrick, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, Mr Mayor, it is a difficult one in many respects because the last week, as you said, everything was settled. As an individual, I speak just as an individual at this point in time, is that I've always been a supporter of the rail. And I've been a supporter probably of the rail going from Launceston, not from anywhere else, from the city of Launceston through to Scottsdale. That has been my preferred option, is the whole route. Then the rail trail, that's well before rail trail or whatever it was called. So that's, over the last couple of years, has been brought forward as a project, and probably rightly so by the Dorset Council, being able to have a rail trail within the municipality or other activities within the municipality. But I'll be interested to see how the discussion goes, because it isn't coming into Launceston, but that's my ultimate aim. I firmly believe that it needs to come into Launceston. It doesn't need to go to Lilydale, Turners Marsh or somewhere outside. Launceston City has got hotels, it's got restaurants, it's got coffee shops, it's got everything, and it's 20 minutes from the airport. It's a major central area to look at the whole north of Tasmania for the tourists. It's logical. It's common sense. Somebody referred to it, I think, at one stage to the West Coast. The West Coast is totally different with that struggle for bringing funds. It's isolated to get there. It's costly to get there. The tourists come in on their planes at the airport 20 minutes away. They come in at Devonport on the ship. They travel through this way to go to the east coast, to go to the northern parts of Tasmania, and to go down the east coast to Hobart as well. It's logical. I have listened to both sides of the argument of the track. I've read a lot of it, believe it or not. I've read a lot of it. By the government and their assessment of the track itself and the state of the track. I've read where an expert from this side and that side. I believe the people promoting the train section, experts, have been professional, have been believable, and have an understanding of what the actual cost would be. I think it's achievable. I think if you look at trials for bikes, I don't want to get into that. I have a grandson that goes to Travail, he goes to Cape Green, he goes everywhere else, riding push bikes. He loves it. They love it, the young kids. But they're into up over the tracks, they're into the dirty trials. That's where they're into. They build their own, and that's what they do now. They go out there and they build their own mounds, they do everything else. So there is a need for it, but I think there is a greater need for a train as a tourist attraction for the northern part of Tasmania and for Launceston. Now it's not achievable because we don't have that here today, and there's been no costing to take it to Scottsdale. But we've been pursuing quite strongly for it to go to Waiina to the farm. That has to happen, in my humble opinion. And that might be against the agreement that the government have with Dorset Council. So that's my opinion. I think it's in proportion. The lab on the farm is one of their biggest attractions. And I hope everybody in this room and listening's been out there. Every day of the week, well, I've been out there half a dozen times, I don't know what days they are, but I remember that there's hundreds of people out there. They're all over the world. There's a lavender farm. And they're investing more into the lavender farm. The people that own it are investing more into the lavender farm to make it better. But we don't encourage that. I think we are remiss as a council to encourage that tourist attraction for our city of Launceston. I believe what has been put forward to me by the people promoting the trains. I believe their expertise. I believe their research. I believe what's happened in Victoria. And I believe it would be a great community thing and a great thing for the city of Launceston. So if we could ever get to Launceston to Scottsdale, I mean, I've been a great believer of bringing it in across Black Bridge, down here at Inverest. Now, one person will tell you the bridge won't hold it, other people will tell you the bridge will. But surely there is a site that we could bring the train in close and into the city itself so the tourists can get on from the city. They can just drive there very simply and easily. I would pursue that if I could. At the moment, it is probably more ambitious to get it to go to Waina. And I would totally support that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Kendrick. So we don't have here's in this council, please. Thank you. Alderman Gibson. Any other speakers? Alderman Finlay.
Thanks, Mayor. Given that the motion is on the table, subject to discussion around the table, I'm open to hearing the other contributions of other aldermen. I think it's important for us to note that the language of the recommendation is about noting the report from the state government. So it's not saying that we're endorsing it, it's not saying that we're committed to the outcomes, but it's noting the content, and that the content has those recommendations that I think all parties at least are supportive, and that is from the element that's in there from Coldwater Creek to Lilydale, and then the bit from the Lilydale Falls to Scottsdale, where we have inconsistency or not a complete cooperation is from Lilydale to Lilydale Falls, and then from Lilydale to Waina. So for me, understanding this recommendation, it says that we note the report and that what number 2 in my mind, and I'm open to be corrected if this is not right, is that we're seeking further work to be done on that element between Lilydale and Waina to see if it is possible for the two parties to come together and work in partnership. My understanding is further that subject to the approval of the regulator, which is a rigorous process that will require an intense amount of work, that it is possible for the rail to travel from Launceston all the way through, and that whatever point that transition happens between the rail and the bike trail, that in fact we end up with this incredible tourism opportunity where both organisations and both groups could work together, that people could load their bikes on a train in Launceston, right in the heart of the city, and then have them taken out to where they can then ride and have an experience. People could go to experience, say, Tunnel on the Denison Gorge, well maybe, but experience the Lavender Farm. And so we've got two elements that are really clear, and we've got one in the middle that's subject to our conversation at workshop last week. We said, let's encourage them to do more. So at the moment, my understanding is that in the event that this motion is supported at council, we're noting the recommendations of the government, we're encouraging further work to occur in the tricky bits, and that all projects have tricky bits. And if we really are committed to what's in the best interests of northern Tasmania, to both locals and tourists, to security and experience, then we work through the tricky bits and figure out how to make something possible, but we'll give it a go. So we're encouraging that the best interests of northern Tasmania can be considered further, and that then, subject to development applications being submitted, City of Launceston will consider what comes before us at that time. But we're saying that for tourism, for the local community, for rail and for bike trail, let's see if we can't meet in the middle around that middle section of the track.
Thank you, Alderman Finlay. Alderman Mackenzie.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I stand and I'll make a declaration. I'm the chairman of the Pedestrian and Bike Committee, but I stand here with a open-minded relationship to what should or shouldn't happen. We were first approached, I think, by the Bike Trail Committee back in probably pre-2015, before the government funding was secured. at which time it was explained what was going on. I was advised there's a lot of consultation that goes on, and I've heard subsequent to that, and I'm disappointed that that consultation hasn't been as broad or as well accepted as I originally was led to believe when we were presented in relation to that. As a consequence, I think this council, or the General Manager, I think, wrote a letter of support to support the trail at that stage, but it was the only gig in town at that point in time. There was no conversations in relation to rail. Subsequent to that, and I think probably when it got to the Legislative Council, I think it then started to get some traction in relation to rail trails and so forth. And I think one of the ones in the south were promoting that, and therefore some changes were going. I think it's also important to note Launceston City Council haven't never been involved specifically in this project. The Dorset Council has always been the promoter of it and wanting to be the rail corridor manager, which means they run the corridor from Scottsdale through to wherever it ended up on the line, albeit some of it goes through the Launceston municipality. Therefore, we only get interested when there's a planning issue associated with it. I take note that we have a number of ratepayers in here who live in Launceston and are affected by the activities on the railway line, and as a consequence of that, they have a vested interest in relation to us making a decision or having some input into it. The reality of it is we don't have any input other than what we might say or put out to the public for them to consider. This motion is, I guess, asking for us to write a letter to Dorset Council to have a conversation between the two parties in relation to the matter. And I think that's as far as we go in relation to what we can do. I look at the rail trail. It was funded in 2015, but it's got till December 2019 to actually physically do it, otherwise their funding is at risk. Part of that funding is taking up the rail and selling the surplus rail and using that to reinvest back in the rail line. I also understand the fact once the rail's gone, it's going to be very hard to put back should subsequently that be the case. I look at the rail trail and I look at the railway proposal. I've read the documents that have been put forward by the government, and to me, whilst it might be laudable, I look at costs of $110,000 versus $3.5 million to do the Waiina line. As far as the actual repairs to the rail to enable it to be used as a railway line. It talks about the rail regulator needing to accredit the railway line, also to be able to accredit people who might be volunteers to work on the railway line to actually do it. So to me, there are significant hurdles associated with actually putting rail back into operational capacity anyway. So I'm conflicted by all of this stuff, and noting that the rail trail people only have a certain amount of time in which to do what they're going to do. So if we leave this open-ended in relation to the timescale in which they are allowed to do this, this could go on for another year or two and then the rail trail disappears full stop. And we may not end up with a railway or a rail trail, and therefore we end up with tourist opportunities in both cases. My learned alderman to the right talked about his grandsons and things like that. The rail trail, if we listen to what came over from the New Zealand group, there are different types. There's road riding, there's trail riding, there's riding in the derbies and things like that, and there is rail trail riding, which are different demographics of people that actually use those trails. So I understand that aspect of it. I'm not going to get into the economics of it. There have been numbers toted on both sides, and I don't know which one's believable and which one's not. Ultimately, they're estimates based on somebody's view, and I guess if I'm putting a case for the rail, I can put a case for numbers there. If I'm putting a case for the rail trail, I can put numbers for that. But both of those are subjective on the basis that nobody really knows until we actually put these things in place. So my view is in relation to this, and I may test the conversation later, is that if we are to promote the Waiina one, because clearly, my view, the second half of the motion doesn't work. I think, as one of the speakers said, in that we want to have a link between the Lilydale Falls and Lilydale for the rail trail, when we actually don't have one from Waiina to Lilydale Falls, except the expensive, over the top and around and things like that, which I believe hasn't been contemplated by the rail trail people. So we have some issues, and my view is that we should have a time-limited conversation in relation to that conversation, and I'd say 3 months. I mean, this work's been going on for a significant amount of time in relation to the railway and the rail trail. So in my view, if you can't get the regulator to give some guidance in relation to whether a railway can be implemented back onto that track or not between now and 3 months' time, then I think that there's been something lacking in the proposal to start with. So my view would be to perhaps test the motion that we actually, in our letter, actually say that we give till 31st of December or 31st of January as the latest date. That way it gives the rail trail some opportunity to actually implement in the event that the railway does not work.
Thank you, Alderman Kenzie. Any other speakers? Alderman Gibson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm not going to go on about my view and what I think should happen. I believe now that what we should do is put our energies into seeing the two parties work together and work collaboratively for the best outcomes for the towns along the way and for the greater Northern Tasmanian community. There's no doubt my email box is bulging from the amount of correspondence, particularly Mr Bryce sends this council. I've read and assessed all of it, and I believe the idyllic, romantic notion of a train running on the line has some merit. But I also believe that the trail proposal has merit. I think that what we should do as a community is now get behind the decision that's been made and support both so that quickly the best outcome can occur for Northern Tasmania and those small battling businesses in the area can benefit from the tourism that both will bring.
Thank you, Alderman Gibson. Alderman Sands.
Thank you, Mayor. Had my thoughts as well, but in all honesty, and I think we reflect back on no doubt we've all watched from time to time, the great train rides and journeys of the world when people go on little trains all over Scotland and Ireland and all over the place. And they're well patronised. And I think if we look at the big picture down the track, be it a decade or 15 years, I can see thousands of people, international tourists, coming to this isle, which is 1.3 million people flying to Launceston each year, as it is now. But when I read the report, which is some 20-odd pages long, and I just have a great deal of difficulty coming to grips with the Department of Finance's report and Treasury when they had an unqualified railway expert pass an opinion, and they've come up with an overall bill of about 15 million, yet the report from Bob Vanslow, who's a professional track engineer, had a completely different view to what was portrayed by the first report. So that's the first sticking point that I have great difficulty in coming to a rational decision. I support we need to come together with Dorset Council and sit down as rational people to discuss this issue in a calm and meditative way. It's no good throwing hand grenades at one another over the bridges to try and resolve an issue because it'll never come to fruition. We'll never get anywhere. So from that point of view, I agree that having been out to Waiina, to Brighterstow several times, and I was out there in the peak period, I just could not believe the amount of cars and tourists. I think there's about 920 there on the day I was there in full season. So when you think of all those people, and in particular the Japanese and the Chinese who come to buy Bobby the Bear, and I even bought Bobby the Bear mug when I was out there, Mayor, because I like drinking my coffee from it. So I think in reality, when you look at all these things that are around, you have to say, is there a net benefit to Tasmania? Is there a net benefit to the rail people? Is there a net benefit to the bike people who want to? And I shudder at the thought of ripping up lines. And I intend going out there with a colleague of mine who's sitting in the gallery today. We're going to walk the line to really understand it. Because once it's gone, it's gone. It's like a heritage building. If you tip down a heritage building and you say, well, let's tear it down and put it in a park. Once you do that, that image is gone, the structure is gone, and I just think it would be a retrograde move if that was to happen. So I'm supportive of the line to Waiina. How you go from Turner's Marsh back into Launceston, I don't fully understand that. And that's what needs to be explained to all of us in layman's terms. We can understand, well, how do you go from Launceston, as Alderman McKendrick is trying to endeavour to get to out to Waiina in a fairly direct route. I understand all about the regulatory arm of the Railway Authority, but I just think deep down we haven't had enough information. Both parties need to understand what they're trying to achieve, but I just think at the end of the day we're lacking some vital information that hasn't been given, and there's probably faults on both sides. It's no good just arming yourself with a certain amount of information saying, well, well, this is just, there's no more, it's a fait accompli, this is what we're going with, because someone with a bit more intelligence and know-how will find a loophole or a flaw in what you're putting forward. So we need to be consciously aware of that. I understand the theory of the rail trail, the bike people, but I really would question how you endeavour or how you intend going across a ravine of some 15 metres deep that's just going to require lots of safety equipment before you cascade down there over the edge. So from that point of view, I think that's a bit flawed, but to rip up the line, I just can't support. I think it's a retrograde move to even entertain it, in my view. So I look forward to some other decisions, Mayor, on this, and I take on board what Alderman Finlay said. We're only noting the recommendation because I challenged the recommendation in point 1. I think that's not correct. It's challengeable by some credible people who need to challenge the numbers first and foremost. And as for saying that, we get the rail authority, that's fine. But I said, all those, the welding points and the line and the sleepers, well, that's, are we plucking ducks out of a hat? I mean, let's not be too critical.
Thank you, Alderman Sands. Any other speakers? Alderman Williams?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Based on some of the discussion that we have already heard, I would like to propose an amendment and test the table to see if there would be support for that. Just waiting for some further notes and guidance on how to... Right, okay, thank you. It is my... because from the perspective of what we've had considered that we are encouraging that conversation to occur, my proposed amendment is to withdraw points A and B under 2 and to instead, in the preceding sentence, it says this correspondence will also outline the Council's preferred outcomes of. Our preferred outcome is a discussion, not necessarily the line itself, outcomes for tourism. And to insert that this occurs within a period of 3 months. And if I could have a seconder for that would be great. Okay. That has to be you. Yep. Don't have my glasses on. Okay. Pass it down. Preferred outcomes of? Yes.
Right, so what we have, point 1 stays the same. Point 2 agrees to write to both the Dorset Council and the Launceston and the, I can move that off the screen please, and the North East Railway Organisation to urge them to work together to develop an agreed outcome whereby both the Rail Trail and Heritage Railway can successfully coexist, and that this action is to occur within 3 months of this decision. Happy with that, Alderman Williams? Yes. Alderman Stojanczak? Yes. So that is it. It's moved and seconded. Do you want to have any discussion on the motion? Anyone want to speak to this motion? Pause for a moment. I'll have you. Count to 10. Thank you. Oh. I've got there twice. I've got to 35 now. So we're all happy with that now. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further? Anyone want to speak to it? This motion, amendment to the motion? No. No. No one else? Yes. Alderman McHenry.
I don't disagree with 1 and 2, which is exactly what we've got in our documents here in front of us. In this motion, we were now probably not going to get, because I could count the heads are all in together to work all this little bit out. That seems to me. But I cannot get away from the fact that we've got a state, in my humble opinion, that one of the crucial parts of this whole project for the Launceston region and northern Tasmania is to take the train to the farm. This does nothing. This is wishy-washy. This is wishy-washy. All we're going to do is say, well, we accept the governor's report and we'll go away and have a little chat again. We have done nothing. Anything definite, anything positive, anything instructive, anything at all, except wash our hands on it. That's all we've done. We've washed our hands and made a decision. We've put it all back out there again, in the fresh air. We, I think, have a responsibility to the city of Launceston, to the people of Lilydale, to the tourists in Launceston that have businesses, to the hotels, to the region, and also to Dorset Council. By taking it out to the farm, the rail trail will be there for the tourist, the bike trail will be there for, and Alderman Finlay summed it up extremely well before she was in this little motion, where she said they could put their bikes on the train. They could enjoy the train ride. They'd get off, they could have a look at the farm. Then they can ride their bikes through to Scottsdale. It's not a 5-kilometre ride, it's a decent ride. So both parties have some agreement, have some benefit. But the big benefit will be to the north, the big benefit will be to Tasmania, if you can put a great train journey and a bike trail together. So for that reason, we've taken out anything that has got guts. We've taken out everything. All we've done, thanks very much for coming today, we'll just accept the report and we'll go and let other people, because we're not included, other people. Once again, no decision by this council. We are elected to make decisions. I'm here today to make a decision to say that the train should go out to Wayne.
Thank you, Alderman McHenry. Alderman Finlay.
Just a point of clarification, I'll ask the mover of the amendment whether, consistent with the conversation had at the workshop last week, the clarification was that point between Lilydale and Wayne. So I'm wondering for clarification, is the word coexist intended to direct that the coexisting happens between Lilydale and Wayne, just for clarification.
General Manager.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Obviously, in listening to Council workshop this matter last week, needing to actually discern what the intent is and what the outcome that it wished to consider, certainly it was that the rail trail conclude in Lilydale and that the railway be provided the opportunity to conclude at Waina. In order for that to occur, there would need to be co-location between those 2 points, and obviously that wasn't considered, and it was actually ruled out as part of the Treasury report based on cost for the entire line, but there's been no work done that I'm aware of with respect to that costing and feasibility within that space of line. Obviously there's widening of cutting and embankment, there's
Okay. Alderman Williams?
That was what I was asking. As opposed to Alderman Henry suggesting it was handled.
Alderman Williams?
It was simply reflective of where the conversation had progressed to in terms of those discussions, but I also acknowledge that that may not be the outcome of the discussion, so I'm happy to have it amended, if you want it removed.
Any other discussion, speakers? To the amended motion we're talking about? Perhaps? No, you can't, sorry. I will just, Deputy Mayor, have the chair for a minute. I tend to agree with Alderman McKendrick. This, not completely, but on the fact that, sorry, I just want to take clear of that, because I will correct, first of all, I haven't got a set opinion on rail or the bikes in some ways. I am still open on that, and I have been for quite some time. I know I've made commitments, no doubt, to people that I'm happy to consider both, and I will continue to do that, consider both. What I'm finding now, though, is that what I find difficult is I get asked quite often, what is Council's view? And I haven't been able to give that view because we haven't got a view. And that's why some people ask, why is this here? That's one reason why it's here, because we need to have a discussion, we need to have a decision at Council so that we can then have a view that then, when asked in the public, I can say exactly what the view of Council is. And as you can see, it's going to be very difficult because the view is obviously not clear and not one way or the other at the moment, and it looks like it's still evolving. From my point of view, I think what is important that we need to make sure that we have good discussion, but that we also make sure that we get the facts right. Now, Alderman McKendrick is quite convinced that one side has got their facts 100% right. Other people disagree with that. I am not quite sure on what the true facts are for some of the issues. I do know that what I would like to see is some clarity where we can work together. I agree with Alderman Gibson on the facts that he stated quite clearly, and I support that there has to be an outcome that we can see the communities come together and to be clear on where the direction needs to go. I hear from some, and I get quite a lot of emails that a lot of other people have got to, saying they want to see the bike track all the way through. No doubt, I've seen that and I've heard that. I have others, and we've heard that today, probably more that today, that people don't want to see the rail pulled up, and they don't want to see cyclists in their backyard across where they've just bought property, etc. So there's lots of division on this. I still believe it's time that we need to have a time where people can work together, come up with some common ground, and hopefully we won't get everybody agreeing. I'm not silly, I realise that, but we can get a majority of people hopefully to come up with a position that can be accepted by the majority of people in the community, and that's probably where I stand. Thank you. Deputy. Alderman Mackenzie.
Thank you. And again, I guess, you know, in my view, we've got these words there, and I just say central to the discussion, those matters are included in the brief.
Thank you. Alderman.
Bullshit.
The mover of the motion or the amended motion would consider. Thank you. Point A to be included. We need to have some direction, clear cut, to have that included rather than just being left out without a bit like a ship without a sail. So if the mover would consider that, I'd be quite moved.
What words do you want?
That the Heritage Trail railway running from Turner's Marsh to Waiina rather than ending at Lilydale.
The mover and seconder, no, that's not included. Any other speakers that haven't spoken on the amended part? You've spoken.
I only asked a point of clarification. The intention of the word coexist.
I thought you spoke before that.
I spoke to the motion before the amendment, but not through the
No, I have got you down as a second speaker. That's correct.
I spoke to the amendment prior. I spoke to the motion prior to the amendment. This is
Correct,
the amendment.
but you also spoke to the amendment.
I asked a point of clarification.
So just explain. Yeah, well,
Standing orders.
yeah, but you spoke and then did a question.
I asked a point of clarification.
Okay, I'll look up.
Exist. I think it's really important, and Alderman Mackenzie has raised. Oh, sorry, I think it was Alderman McKendrick actually has raised the point that. Speaking to this amendment, that when an item comes to the table, we have to be really clear what our intentions are, and that's why I raised the point of clarification. And I think from the workshop discussion and the discussion at the table, the clear intention for us is to send a message to say that there is a gap in the report where there is not clear commitment, or there's more opportunity to work together. And I think we have to be clear about what that says, because at the moment, subject to the point of clarification about the word coexist, I understand and I support people moving amendments, but that was about people coexisting across the whole project. Very specifically, the conversations of this council were about seeking to coexist between Lilydale and Waiina. I think it's important that that message is delivered. I think that that is what is drafted in the original recommendation before us, and therefore, unfortunately, I'm unable to support the amendment, although I understand the intention of the amendment, because for me personally, it's really important to send that clear message about what we're actually seeking, and the whole reason why we've got at the table today is because I think more can be done.
Thank you. Alderman Finlay. Any other speakers? Alderman Williams, you wish to close?
I will briefly, thank you, Mayor. Just to add a bit of my rationale, in terms of the criticism of removing this specification referring to the Heritage Railway running from Turners Marsh to Waiina, I want more information about that. I can't make a decision on that today, and I stand by that. I also suspect that that statement would not necessarily address the issues that Alderman McKendrick would like to see in terms of extending that. So in terms of removing that, it's not necessarily a loss to that broader extension that that Alderman was referring to. And point B, I hardly think it's our place to recommend that Dorset Council be urged to request additional funding for their own project. I don't think that we would receive that very well, and I don't think that Dorset Council will receive that very well from us either. I do acknowledge the statement that was made about the terminology. I accept that. I did retain that because it was reflective of the original motion, and that's reflective again of the broader conversation around some specifics, and in keeping that, retaining that specifics, it does kind of bring that focus back to what is within the realms of the Launceston municipality. We do need to keep focus that this is not the project that's being driven by Launceston City Council, and that we do need to ensure that those other parties are talking together, but not necessarily. We cannot take responsibility, so there is not, in terms of the project itself, so in terms of being able to capture that, I think we're doing the best that we can with the wording.
Thank you. I'll put the amended motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? Well, that's lost. Thank you. We'll go back to the motion. Any other speakers on the motion that haven't spoken? Deputy Mayor. Who voted for? Williams and Stodgenship? Everyone else against? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Alderman McKenzie abstained. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor. I guess all I wanted to do, rather than repeat what had been has already been said, because that's there's been a significant amount of discussion about it. I guess for mine, Mr. Mayor, when this first came up, and I think one of the earlier speakers said 3 or 4 years ago now, this has been an issue out there. I guess one of my frustrations has been around the fact many of us have sat around this council table at different times on different issues and commented about how great it would be having more people engaged in the community with what goes on in the community. Passionate people who believe in certain things to bring them forward, to make our region and our city better. And what we've got in this situation, as I read it, Mr. Mayor, is we've got a lot of passionate people, and I think that's a great thing. But where I'm seeing things go at the moment, we've got one group of very passionate people over here, one group of very passionate people over there. And as that argument has unfolded over a period of time, and it is a period of time, as I said, that in some ways has made this issue far more difficult to deal with. I'm getting emails like Alderman and others are, where one group is putting forward some numbers, some materials that they've had some consultancy on, the other group's debunking those and putting their own forward, and so on. And that's all part of the process, obviously, as we debate and different things. But I guess that causes a little bit of angst, because out in the community it's creating divisions. Now people might say, oh, well, that's all part and parcel of it, but listening to the matter being discussed today, those in the gallery have heard a number of aldermen speak, a number of aldermen have got different views of how this should work. I think you, Mr. Mayor, summed it up well when you said one of the challenges is we haven't had a position, and we haven't. We haven't had a position, there's nothing on the books. So I guess for me today, what's before us gives us that chance to have that position. And whilst I understand the sentiment behind Alderman Williams and Alderman Stodgensek's amendment a moment ago, I'm with Alderman McKendrick. I don't actually think it really added a lot to what our position should be. So I guess if I had a magic wand, one of the things I would hope is that passion that's out there, a significant amount of passion can be harnessed and people can give a little and work together and hopefully get an outcome that benefits all. Because the British Day that's been mentioned many times today, in literature that's come to us from speakers around the table, people need to get out there and see what that does to understand the impact that this development can have on this region. And it is beyond, I think, what some people can comprehend. I went out to British Day and I must admit, had no illusions, had no preconceptions. I thought I was going to something at Aurora Stadium with the amount of traffic. There were marshals there in vests directing people in where to park. It was crazy. Speaking to Robert Ravens, who I know at different times has presented to council and informally and informally. So we need to get this right. We need to have a position. And as I said, my wish is that the groups would come together and try and understand each other's argument, hold on to their passion, debate fiercely, but also be prepared to give and understand the other side's argument. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other speakers that haven't spoken? Alderman McKendrick, do you wish to close?
I think it's a debate that we needed to have, and it's gone on for quite a while, and I'm with you. We keep getting asked by the community. I'd just like to just very quickly add to say that to the Dorset Council, I think if they could perhaps understand that it would be, they'll end up with a bike trail, they'll end up through to Scottsdale, which would be a benefit to them. We will end up with a train, and they will as well. And the north, I think will benefit. Not just, it'll be a benefit to both municipalities. And I'm sure, Mr Mayor, and I hope, and as it goes, that point 2, and I think that, where are we, point B, that was mentioned just a moment ago, I think, by Alderman Williams down there, whether Dorset would like that said to them, I suppose, or whatever, that's their responsibility, that perhaps it may be a joint effort that this council may consider joining with them and going to the state government and making a joint approach to the state government to fund that extra money, not just leaving it to the Dorset Council. So I thank the Alderman and I'd move the motion.
Thank you. Can I just clarify that with that point
2B?
2B, because the government have verbally agreed to do that.
I didn't know whether I should say that.
Well, I'm going to say that because we've had that discussion. They've verbally agreed, but I think the purpose of this is that it is in writing and that it is clarified.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I didn't know whether I should say that.
I thought I would, for the record. I think it's good to know. So I put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? So that is carried. The 2 against is Williams and Stosenzek. Oh, 3. Sorry, Alderman McKenzie. Missed that. You better stick it up higher. So that is carried. We now move back to, maybe we have a break for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. PM local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time.
We'll move on. We'll go back on to the Mayor's announcements. I do want to report on a few items, and especially it was a pleasure on the 13th of September to attend the Launceston College with the STEAM NGN. They do a brilliant job, and some of the ideas and thoughts that were there was fantastic and great, so really appreciate that. Also, just to mention that on Tuesday the 18th of September, the Forum, the Chamber of Commerce, did not attend that because it was postponed. It's on this week. And also on the Thursday the 20th, it was a pleasure with the Deputy Mayor was there. We attended the Bakers Group little celebration of their completion of the Brisbane Street Mall to this point in time, and it was great to be there with just to thank the staff and the workers who were involved. And what came out of that is the great support that our staff have been and to working with the Baker Group. So, General Manager, if you could pass it on to all our staff, they really appreciate the cooperation and the working together. And it was good comments were said from all, which is great. Also attended the university dinner along with Alderman Williams and Finlay and Mackenzie I think that's it. And Stojnicek, thank you. And just to briefly say, I'm very pleased with the speech of the Chancellor, the Vice-Chancellor, and to say that some of the points that he made was very important, especially that in the past they've looked at the university as a hub and spoke model, with we being obviously a spokes up here, and he's really looking at changing that, and each campus in its community to be a separate and to be individual, and setting out the changes of that model. So looking at that, really agreed, and also some of the issues that we've disagreed with them in the past, where there's been lack of trust between the two, and he spoke of that. So I think it was a very frank forthright, and now it's going to be obviously the way forward to how we can continue to work forward on that as well. Also, on the 21st of September, did attend the Starting Point Neighbourhood House AGM with Alderman Hugh Mackenzie was there as well. If you haven't had a chance to read their report, can I encourage you to get a copy of the report? Absolutely fantastic work they do in the community, and just some highlights were the garden, the way the garden is working. Absolutely amazing, the material they get out of that, or the veggies and food they get out of that. The Wheels for Work, the mentoring program is absolutely doing a lot of good for a lot of the people, because once they get their licence, get cars, they get jobs, and that's something that's been proven out there as well. The Men's Shed going very well, and the need for literacy, the Link Up Literacy Project. Very encouraged when I heard the work happening there, teaching people how to do the writing, do the resumes, etc. And again, they are finding that people, once they get through the process, are getting into employment. So really pleased with that report, and it was fantastic to be there to hear all the stories. Great weekend with Blooming Tasmania, a great success, so very pleased to have been there. And it was great on Friday to go to the Great Northern Raiders inaugural season launch at UTAS Stadium. So that's the new cricket team from the north and the northwest, which will be playing down south, and it was really encouraging to see the players that were selected and the excitement for them, but also how important that is for our young cricketers coming through, that they can stay up here in the north rather than have to go to Hobart. So I think hopefully that's going to be a great success. And something I went to on Saturday was also the NTJSA tournament, where they have a tournament of 78 teams. Quite amazing. 78 teams are playing there. There's a booklet on it for all the teams. What was encouraging, there was, I believe it was 4 or 5 teams from the mainland. Come from Sydney and other places around our community, from Beachside, from Hinchinbrook, Croydon City, Ringwood. So fantastic to see clubs coming down to support that event, and to see thousands and thousands of nearly 2,000 people, I think, were there on the Saturday and the Sunday, and what a great event for our city. The only problem, and the comment that I got walking around, General Manager, was there wasn't enough fields to play on, or soccer pitches. They didn't have enough, so it's something that obviously we'll continue to have discussions on. With all the people that were there, the teams that were playing, I think they had, 169 games were played over the weekend. So it's a lot of games of soccer played with these young people. A lot of juniors and enjoying their soccer. Great to see. So that's it from myself. Thank you. Alderman Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you might not have attended the Launceston Retailers Forum because it was cancelled, or it's transferred to this Wednesday.
I said that.
Oh, sorry, did you? I apologise. I thought it is on this Wednesday for those that want to go. I wasn't. You're quite right. Terrible. Sorry, my apologies for that. I just wanted to make a couple of comments, in relation to the Mayor, the Starting Point Neighbourhood House AGM that we attended last week. I think it does show the amazing things that go on in that community. I think late last week, they received their 500th box of vegetables that had been given into the neighbourhood house to assist people, with their food, things that they were just from the gardens that are either being grown at people's homes or at the vegetable gardens that they've got in and around the area. And also was at the Max general meeting the day, the Men's Shed general meeting the day before, and it was great to see the support that's coming through there, and the activities are going on there. The Work for the Dole program that's going on in there at the moment is quite significant. A number of young people going in there, and they're actually bringing young kids from schools and teaching them skills at the Men's Shed. So fantastic learning place, and I think people like me would probably get some benefit out of actually going up there and learning how to hammer a nail and do a few things as well. So I think there'll be opportunities for us to all go and interact with regards to that. But the other one I just wanted to relate on was the Good Neighbour Council annual general meeting, which the Mayor was the guest speaker at and spoke very well at last Friday. And the Good Neighbour Council was basically made up of migrants who have come in to either work on the dams, and various other bits and pieces have come in for various activities. And this year was their 69th annual general meeting. So next year they'll be celebrating 70 years of being in and around the city. And they're an amazingly interactive group of people who I think we should, as a community, try to support their 70th year in some way. Hopefully they might put an application in for something for either a civic reception from our perspective, or maybe we might do that, or alternatively at least give them some funding through some of our small events. They may need some assistance in doing that, that's the only thing. But interestingly, the Mayor listed off, I think, about 20 different activities for people of their age and stage, and surprisingly not many of them knew much about it, which was a bit sad. So I've suggested that we ought provide them a list of all the things and activities that go on for some of our people in the community, so they can hang it up on their notice board and know where they can go. Things like the swimming programs for elderly in the swimming pool and places like that. But the Mayor was getting quite concerned that nobody knew about our programs. But so maybe from a communications point of view, we need to make sure that them and others in the community that aren't getting the message have a calendar of events for some of those things.
Yeah, we need to do things in German, I was told, wasn't it? Yeah. Alderman Gibson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just two things from me. Wanted to comment on the wonderful Blooming Tasmania Flower and Garden Festival. Jane and the team from Blooming Tasmania do an incredible job with that event, and to see how it has grown over the last 3 years is testament to their dedication, their passion and their organisation. So Michael and Jane and the team there did a great job utilising the Albert Hall and also the City Park. And what people said to me on Sunday was how the City Park aspect of it is growing year on year, and of course featured our own Launceston City Council staff's installation, which was wonderful, competing against the bridge right next door. But that event is a great one, and of course one that we support through our events program. The second and final thing I wanted to reference was the Waste Not Awards. I've been going along a couple of years in a row now, together with a number of people around the table. And the thing that strikes me each time I go to anything organised by Jess, Rachel or Mike is the passion that they have to see our community make a difference, to impact the amount of rubbish and recyclable goods that are going to landfill, and to eliminate the huge number of things that are unnecessarily going to landfill. And the passion that they have for their work and the education programs and initiatives that they run is absolutely contagious, and is testament, I think, to their the team that is just working on that initiative for our council. It was great, of course, to welcome lots of young people there, and Mayor, together with other mayors, you spoke and would have seen the passion. The not-for-profit groups who were being recognised for their contribution, big or small, the school initiatives, the student representative councils, and of course other organisations as well. But I just wanted to highlight it because it is inspiring, and I think the passion that that team are showing in leading the way for the Northern Tasmanian Waste Management Group is worthy of commendation.
Thank you, Alderman Gibson. Any other Alderman reports?
I just wanted to ask a question based on the conversation that we had this morning with regard to Alderman Soward's question last meeting, 11.1.1. The response from the university says the University of Tasmania has advised that it is currently meeting with stakeholders to undertake further consultation. I would question the word further, as I did this morning in the presence of the Vice-Chancellor, because I do believe it to be the case that there has been no consultation with regard to the changes of that course. So, Mr Mayor, could it be noted, here is the question, could it be noted that perhaps the word further is an exaggeration of the truth?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Other than to say, I've just reflected in that response what was obviously relayed to me. They consider that consultation has occurred. Whether or not it's been effective enough, that's the question. But you know, we take your point and can record that.
Thank you. Any other questions, Alderman Deputy Mayor?
Thanks, Mayor. Just a real brief one, and I've had a number of people ask me about, and I know it is weather dependent, when the final work will go on with Cemetery Street in terms of the final seal and so forth with that. So just wondering if we've got a time frame. Thanks.
Director Everhart.
Providing the rain stays away, it'll be within the next 3 weeks.
Any other questions from Alderman Finlay?
Just a quick question, Mayor. Thank you. Following on from public question time, directed to the organisation, just in response to the question about election signage and consistency with our planning scheme. Just wondering what the organisational response to that is.
Thanks, Mayor. So the question was about whether more than one sign could be on a property, and as the Mayor indicated, only one sign of 1.5 square metres per title is exempt from the planning scheme. What we will be doing as an organisation is, once the candidates are announced tomorrow, we'll actually be contacting all of the candidates and asking and reminding them of the guidelines and asking them to self-regulate as much as possible, but also providing advice as to what action we'll take if we get any complaints in writing. Yeah. We will investigate and take action as appropriate.
Any other questions? From Alderman? No? We move on then to committee reports. Northern Youth Coordinating Committee. 12.1, moved Alderman Gibson, seconded Alderman Finlay. Just to speak to it, Alderman Gibson.
Just briefly, it's all there, but I wanted to reference the event that's happening on the 10th of October at the Albert Hall, the Mental Health Week event, a real showcase of wellbeing, interactive things for all members of our community, particularly the young members of our community, a great thing to do on the eve of what is currently a public holiday.
Thank you. Alderman Finlay, wish to speak? Any other Alderman wish to speak? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. That is Alderman Mackenzie, yeah? Or that is all Alderman present. That is carried. We move on to 14.1. Alderman Sauer, Deputy Mayor. Do you wish to move the motion as is? Seconded Alderman Mackenzie. Do you wish to speak?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. In preparing this notice of motion today, I guess just to take a little flashback, I think in the life of this council we may have had 3 different occasions where we've had to deal with matters, a couple I think up at Hutton Rise and one more recently out towards Gilmont Close with regards to the impact of Planning Directive 4.1. Now, in those debates and discussions at the time, it's a bit like when you've seen the movie and you get to see it again and then you get to see it again. So the same arguments were used by the community, the same rationale in discussion. Alderman, by and large, felt some empathy and with some concern and so forth. So as a result of that last time that came to us, I liaised with the General Manager and Director Hurst, and I'm very appreciative of their support, and also Alderman Williams, I know, who had some discussion with the General Manager, and I appreciate, Alderman Williams, your input there too on what's before us today. Mr Mayor, I think that in bringing this forward today, this matter has been raised by this council, and it indicates in our papers, it's raised back in 2013. It was raised by this council as a council a matter of concern, and the likely poor planning outcomes. One of the things, Mr Mayor, I guess for mine, and I did note this, I think, well, definitely last time and maybe the time before this came to us here as a challenge. One of the things I'm a little worried about is that when people sit out there in the community and they're buying, blocks in new subdivisions, that not sure of what's going to come may impact on that, and that can then flow on into other parts of the market. So I think what I've got here today is very straightforward. It's not something that's it's clear. It's not ambiguous. It's to the point. I think the other thing too that I like about it, Mr Mayor, is the fact that in writing to the Minister, one of the things we know from time to time as aldermen, and I'm sure as councillors, when we take things to the attention of ministers, sometimes ministers, if we don't do it and we think someone else has done it, ministers go, "Oh, no one's told me that." Haven't heard that. What we're asking in this notice of motion today, we're asking the GM to compile a report which examines the planning outcome. So we're going to get some really good data there. And in point 2, we restate the concerns, we provide the data, and then we request that a review of PD 4.1 be conducted. Because I reckon, in reading between the lines, I would reckon that there may be some challenges in other councils as well. So I look forward to hearing other aldermen's remarks on it. And again, as I said, I thank the GM and Director Hurst for their expertise and input into some of the language and obviously the history as well of the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Alderman Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'd like to commend Alderman Soward for bringing this motion to the table today. I think we've variously over the last 4 or 5 years I've been involved, been faced with situations where we've approved unit developments in places where we'd probably rather not, just because of their location and the density that occurred with parking and a whole host of things. I guess Gilmont Place, even though I wasn't here to vote on that particular issue, was probably just brought this to a head and probably timely going into the election, just to make that comment, even though we've gone past the state election, but we do have the planning scheme that's under review at the moment. So I think that receiving the report back from the council officers in relation to what we have approved over the last little while and doing an analysis of what that might have meant by way of density and streetscapes and also parking and traffic management, I think would be really valuable in going back to the state government to give them some input in relation to what's actually physically happening on the ground.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Alderman Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm also very supportive of this, and I do thank the Deputy Mayor for bringing this forward and for communicating about it as well, because it is obviously something that is quite representative of the discussions that we've had around this table. And I also wanted to acknowledge the work that Alderman Sands has done on this in the background as well. So I think adding our voices together as a collective, this is what we do, and so I'm supporting this today. Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Williams. Any other alderman wish to speak? Deputy Mayor, you wish to close? I will put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all aldermen present. The motion is carried. 15.1. Now, how do you want to do this, Alderman? In just one at a time? Oh, yeah, but some have to move out of some. That's why I'm just asking. Yep. Thank you. So, are you happy to move that? Someone second that? Move, Alderman Mackenzie. All those in favour, just so we've got it correct. Thank you. So we're doing 15.1. Point 1. Oh, I don't know what it is. The Encore Theatre Company. And the licensing competitions. Oh, we're doing both? Oh, together? Yeah. Good. Okay. No, you happy to move that? Alderman Finlay, seconded Alderman Mackenzie. Any discussion on that? No speakers? Can I put the motion then? All those in favour? That is all aldermen present. The motion is carried. We'll wait for Alderman Gibson to come back. We haven't got. Well, can we move a motion? Then you can ask. Somebody, what's somebody moving? The whole lot? 15.1 only, or 15.1, 2, and 3, and 4? Now we've got a speaker for 15.3 though, just so we know. Oh, okay. So just 15.1, the balance of that. Moved Alderman Mackenzie, seconded Alderman McKendrick. Just to speak to a question.
Just a broader question, probably maybe Dorothy, I hope something like that. Just in relation to those events that are either partially or not funded at all, what communications do we have back from them? Do they seek responses as to why they failed, and what
Yes.
and what do we actually do as far as giving them advice on how to better fill forms in?
I try to phone those that aren't successful. If I can't phone them, they are emailed. I don't get a response with the phone. And if there's any queries, well, it's discussed on the phone, and I do offer to meet with people who aren't successful if they want to go through the application. that's entirely up to them.
Just to speak to it, Alderman McKenzie? Alderman McKendrick? Any other Alderman wish to speak? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all Aldermen that are present. That is carried. 15.2, moved Alderman McKendrick, seconded Alderman McKenzie. Oh, you're allowed to go. Oh, you want to break it up? You want to speak to any of the others? Well, then we might as well do the lot. So 15.2, moved Alderman McKendrick, was it, or McKenzie? Which way around was that? McKendrick, and then McKenzie. Do you wish to speak to it? Anyone wish to speak to it? Can I put the motion? Those in favour, please raise your hand, and that is carried. Thank you. Get Alderman Stojanczyk to come back. So 15.3, we do have a speaker. Did you hear the requirements for speakers before? Oh, you didn't. Oh, we'd better read them out again then. General Manager. So just got to wait till we read that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. So only residents, ratepayers or people on the electoral roll of the City of Launceston may address an item on the agenda. Before commencing, please state your name and address or property owned in Launceston. You may speak for up to 2 minutes. There is no extension of time permitted. You must speak for or against the recommendation, not ask questions of aldermen or officers, or attempt to enter debate with aldermen or officers. Statements can only be made either directly relating to supporting the recommendation or arguing against it. Comments and statements are not to be defamatory, offensive or abusive, or be designed to embarrass any person, including aldermen or officers. Statements are not to be repetitive of statements or points already made. Several people repeating a common position should nominate a single speaker on their behalf. The Mayor may ask a member of the gallery to cease speaking if the above procedures are not followed. Following hearing the comments of the gallery, Alderman will then consider the item.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Jane Forrest at 12 Pershing Street, Mowbray. I'm also the festival manager for the inaugural Australian Musical Theatre Festival, and it's on that I'm speaking today. The Australian Musical Theatre Festival is a brand new festival to be held from the 23rd to the 26th of May 2019. It is an initiative of Events Tasmania. They commissioned research into what festival would be appropriate for Launceston in the winter time, and a number of options were considered, and Musical Theatre Festival rose to the top for a number of reasons. One, because Launceston just happens to be musical theatre crazy. We have a wonderful and vibrant musical theatre population here. Also because musical theatre is an indoor event, and so we don't have to worry about the winter weather. And thirdly, because it's a unique festival in Australia. There's no other festival celebrating musical theatre nationally. So this will be a national festival. It will be based on the business model of Festival of Voices, so a pay-to-attend model. We'll be inviting musical theatre groups from around the country to attend, to celebrate musical theatre in all its forms, and also to participate in masterclasses. And the big draw card that we will be bringing to Launceston for the festival is a musical theatre celebrity. So we're hoping to work our way up to Hugh Jackman in Year 3, but not going to put that pressure on ourselves in the first year, but hopefully a musical theatre star from Australia, from Melbourne or Sydney. We are currently in the process of setting up an entity to manage the festival, so we are in for the long term. We have an application into Events Tasmania for funding for 5 years, and so we look forward to working with the City of Launceston over those 5 years to build the event into something spectacular, and we look forward to inviting you all to celebrate with us in May next year.
Thanks very much, John. We appreciate that. Thank you for the information about it as well. So we've got 15.3, moved Alderman McKendrick, seconded Alderman Finlay. Wish to speak to it, Alderman McKendrick?
Very much said about 15.3%.
Alderman Finlay? Any other Alderman wish to speak? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all aldermen present. The motion is carried. 15.4, taxi... Oh. Sorry? Alderman McKendrick. As is? Move. Seconded, Deputy Mayor. you wish to speak to it, Alderman Kendrick?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to increase it to probably 5,000. But there you go. I don't have a few issues, even though I'm gold up to like but it's, I think it was 2007, was it, the last time? Was that right?
2000.
7 or something, when it was here.
Oh, sorry.
And there's quite a contingent of them, Mr Mayor, around about 200, I think, from memory, that will turn up. And I'm sure that apart from the 230, apart from the $231 that they will spend in accommodation and stuff in Launceston, I'm sure there will be other money spent in the city of Launceston on food and soft drinks and milkshakes and all those things that are good for them, because they'll be keen golfers to play well. And I think we should be supporting that, Mr Mayor. It's 250 odd thousand to the
292.
292. I'm only going quickly from memory.
Helping you out.
Thank you very much. 292, $300,000 to the economy of Launceston. Huh?
I didn't say that.
I've rounded it up. I'm an accountant. Listen. And sending out a bill. But anyway, I've rounded it up to 300,000, and I think it'll be great for the economy. I would have loved to have seen they've requested $2,000, excuse me, which is not a great deal of money for the event and the size of the event, and particularly when you look at the numbers that are coming from interstate, coming to visit us here, hopefully visit us here and enjoy the city of Launceston.
Thank you. Question on
Mackenzie.
Yeah, that's right. Just a question, and based on probably the comments made by Alderman McKendrick, I guess that we put this through our normal process, which clearly comes in at 54%, which would then mean they'd get 50% of what they've asked for. I guess my question is really, given it's a special event, as in sort of separate to our normal events, and I guess given the small amount of the ask and given the likely input or likely return of 292,000, I'm just queer. 292,677. I am an accountant. And yeah, the concept of that, I think, for the purpose of this, I'd be questioning. I guess we can do anything we like, but I don't want to compromise our model. And without compromising our model, I think that we could probably go to the 2,000 they've requested. Is that possible? I'm asking from the officers. Do we have it in the budget?
Director Hurst.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, yes, the process, we do have a process, and the process has been applied, and this is the recommendation that's come from the event sponsorship panel. Having said that, if Aldermen were to make a decision to fund the full amount, then we have the budget to provide that.
Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, Will, and I'm delighted to support, but I actually am going to slightly tweak that and move that we give them the $2,000. Like, that's got to be a separate motion. So I can't.
Well, the mover and the second could agree to that.
Well, you probably could. Does the mover agree?
I did.
You? Yeah, he's second.
I'm quite happy as a mover.
Okay.
Thank you. The risk of not.
Sorry, point of order. I mean, that's fun and good around the table, but it's not actually the way we work here.
No, it's not.
So if it is to be a recommendation for the full amount of funding, I suggest we follow the proper course
Do
of
an
action.
amended motion, which I don't reckon the seconder can do.
Can I amend it as the seconder?
No, I think so.
All right. Well, $110 million budget. Can someone come up with something?
Alderman Gibson's the next speaker.
I just wanted to say, in terms of the formula that we use, in terms of adding money for milkshakes and the like, it's already built into that formula. So the formula is $231 per day, which is the spend, which is the formula that is used by Tourism Northern Tasmania and Tourism Tasmania, and it takes into account their accommodation and the yield from associated expenses that those participants will have. So that is the net return, the 231.
Thank you, Alderman Gibson. Any other speakers? No other speakers? Alderman Kendrick, you wish to close?
I just think your contribution, I thought it might have been held at Christmas time with Grinch about, but it's not. So, March, I thought Grinch was about at the moment.
Thank you. All those, can I put the motion? Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is carried by all aldermen present. Thank you. So we move on. The Combat Engineers Memorial, 18.1. Move, Deputy Mayor. Seconded, Alderman Sands. Wish to speak, Deputy.
Briefly, thanks, Mr Mayor. It's spelled out very clearly in our documents, but just to highlight the key points there, what we're trying to do here is work with a request from the community, which is always a good place to start, to install a memorial at Kings Park to commemorate the contribution and sacrifices of combat engineers. Our papers spell out very, very clearly about that. And for those who may be wondering about the funding of the memorial, it's funded by the organising group and designed to ensure that it is durable, safe, low maintenance and befitting of an engineer memorial. The copy of the proposal and statement of support is attached, so it's online for all of those out there that are listening who may be wondering what this is going on. It also indicates, Mr Mayor, just to highlight that, it has the support of the Launceston RSL and the Australian Army School of Military Engineering, who will be gifting the 2 panels that will be used in the construction of the memorial. One of the things I guess I really like about it, and I'm sure those who know a little bit about the work that engineers do, is that the memorial is proposed to be built using 2 steel panels from a Bailey Bridge. The Bailey Bridge is particularly relevant and famous in World War II for enabling forces to rapidly cross rivers and move about the battlefield. So I guess, Mr Mayor, the engineers aren't just coming up with some sort of random old design, they're actually building something that actually means something to the people who are engineers, and I think that is full credit to them. So this one I think is very straightforward. I know there's been a number of discussions around it, and I wholeheartedly support it, and more importantly I would also commend the group on approaching council with what to them is a very, very important thing and something I think we should support.
Thank you, Deputy. Alderman Sands? Alderman Mackenzie?
Yes, I do, Mayor. Thanks for that. And I guess it's important to note that in the items with the agenda, there's actually reference to a particular individual, Corporal Atkinson, which I think was originally the intent that would be for an individual. And I think we went back to our policy in relation to that, which meant that we weren't supporting memorials for individuals in the park, but it was more for the group. So anybody reading that might see that there's a reference there to Corporal Atkinson, and certainly not wishing to besmirch his role in relation to it, but it was more to represent that the things that go in the memorial garden are to represent groups of people who might have fought in war or done things like that rather than individuals. So as a consequence of that, it fits in with the guidelines in which that we operate under. So just for those that might be listening or have read our papers.
Any other speakers? Deputy Mayor, you wish to close? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all Alderman present. 18.2 release, moved Alderman Kendrick and seconded Alderman Cox. Wish to speak to Alderman Kendrick? No. Alderman Cox?
Just briefly, Mayor, the fact they've been there for about 40 years, and I think a lot of people don't even know they're there, under the Road Safety Centre, the fact that they're going to expand, 200 odd members, do a great job. Great group of enthusiastic people. Yeah, good decision. Great.
Any other speakers? Alderman Kendrick, wish to close? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all Alderman present. The motion is carried. Thank you, Alderman Kendrick. And let's go to close council. Second by Alderman Cox. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is carried. So we now go into close council.
Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during break.